Over the past 10 years of the OCP community, we've seen significant ecosystem growth and advancement. The key areas where OCP has been so focused is hardware, server design, networking form factors, open system firmware, rack and power standards, security, storage, and just overall data center facilities footprints. Two of the projects that I think were recently highlighted by Bill Carter that I think are wonderful ones to talk about the evolution over the last 10 years is the 2017 program for telco. So the telco project really brought in a whole new set of telecommunications companies to OCP who were interested in that, again, vanity-free, modular hardware, really ensuring that they were having best-in-class total cost of ownership. So key operators like AT&T, Deutsche Telekom, SK Telecom, Verizon joined OCP, EE, as well as industry leaders like Nokia, Equinix, and Nexus. And that really changed a lot of the focus and tenor of the foundation as we brought new people to the table to share their experiences. The other program that I'm super proud of in 2019 was the Solution Provider Program. And this was really around kind of two fundamental shifts that had always been, I think, in the OCP Foundation's landscape with partners on the board like Rackspace, but hadn't necessarily been officially something we were tracking or managing. And that really was, the integrated solutions, helping it be easier for ISVs and key partners to certify new designs, but also circular economy. So really helping drive reuse and extended life to amortize, silicon embedded carbon in sustainability over time. So those are the two projects that I'm probably most excited about. In terms of, key learnings, things that we should probably improve upon, I think the pandemic was an incredibly tough time for the foundation. The foundation did a wonderful job controlling expenses and managing things correctly and pivoting to a more virtual world. But that was something that, we're hopefully turning a low light into a highlight in terms of keeping the best of the virtual world and landscape, but really focusing on bringing industry partners together again as quickly as possible with our global summit moving forward.
I can't believe it's been 10 years since the start of Open Compute, and there certainly has been a lot of challenges and opportunities along the way. The first is just the sheer growth of the community. When I first started, it was just a few companies working on compute, storage, and networking devices. And to see how the community has grown to now over 8,000 engineers working across 30 projects. We have telco devices and AI devices and chiplets and accelerators. So it's just been really fun to watch how big and broad the community has developed over the last 10 years. Another very exciting area has been the supply chain. When we first started, there were only a few suppliers serving 2 or 3 hyperscale companies. And now we have over 30 different types of resellers worldwide, from basic component suppliers all the way up through full rack systems integrators, providing local managed services around Open Compute. So to see the shift of some of these service providers to their entire business model being focused on Open Compute has been a real fun, interesting transition to watch in the market. And the third is the type of company that has joined Open Compute. When we first started, it was primarily a few hyperscalers and several vendors. But now, looking at our membership, you have retail companies, you have oil and gas companies, you have telcos, and you have a variety of different types of vendors and not just core compute, storage, and networking vendors. So we've really broadened the membership directory, we've broadened the community, and that's been fun and exciting to see as well. The growth in Asia has been amazing. To watch the entire movement of North Asian companies join Open Compute, Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, Inspur, JD.com, all of these type of companies really add a lot of credibility to an open source organization like OCP. So my appreciation goes out to all the hard work that's been done in that region to help drive the awareness for OCP. And that has been one of our biggest challenges. When it first started, it was primarily whatever Facebook was doing, and it wasn't really perceived as being available for everyone else. So we've spent a lot of time educating the market that the benefits that you can get from open compute are not just for the hyperscalers, that you can achieve these benefits even at smaller deployment scales. So we've started to see that adoption and that attitude change within companies toward open hardware designs. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts for me over the last 10 years is the way the perception of companies working within an open community. Can you imagine 10 years ago, a hardware manufacturer open sourcing their design for a server or a rack or a power supply? But that's happening now in a community within OCP. So the shift of the supplier mentality from a proprietary closed mind to an open source collaborative environment has been the biggest surprise and the biggest achievement, I think, of open compute in the last 10 years.
Over the last decade, we have witnessed an exponential increase of computation demand in our data centers. This is due to the fact that artificial intelligence is quickly evolving and become widely adopted in many aspects of people's life. How to create a scalable yet sustainable infrastructure to meet ever-growing computation demand is very challenging. We are really happy to see that OCP Open Compute project has spearheaded a number of great initiatives to bring community together and address robustness and serviceability of computing infrastructure. As a leading cloud service provider in the world, Alibaba Cloud actively embraces open initiative and work closely with the community to enable better interoperations in our cloud computing infrastructure. Being a platinum member of OCP, Alibaba Cloud has contributed a few initiatives, including advanced immersive liquid cooling technology.
Happy birthday, OCP. 10 years, what a past. So this is just crazy when you think about it. So especially for somebody who joined the community in 2012, when it was still very small and focused on server design. During the past 10 years, tremendous progress has been made into many work groups, including the telco, the networking work group, and the storage. And we have seen more and more people embracing OCP technologies, not only because the technology was good, but also because of the mindset on how it has been engineered. And this is probably the most important things when you think about communities and the way they are designing things. The most important focus for this community right now during the past decade has been servers. So we focused on hyperscalers and lowering power energy, and this was a very important topic when you think about it. And when we look at the latest events which happens everywhere around the world, I'm speaking about the flooding in Germany or the flooding in China. So we see that the climate change is real, and that we should all have some focus on how we can improve within our industry. And OCP is really pushing the boundaries around these areas right now.
Open Compute Project had achieved so much in the last 10 years. It all started out by having a couple engineers looking for innovation on their hardware gears. And today, we have over 250 companies, 5,000 engineers, 16,000 participants working hand-to-hand in 9 different projects and try to bring us the next generation infrastructure. These 9 different projects including compute, storage, networking, edge computing, artificial intelligence, and even advanced liquid cooling. The goal for all this project is trying to achieve an optimized solution to power our next generation data center. I think the goal is very obvious, and I think the really benefit everyone. Inspur, we do consider ourselves as pioneer in open hardware initiative. We heavily invested in open hardware. That's why we become the first one to have a Scopio project. We're the first one to have a OTII edge computing product. And then, of course, we heavily participate in the OCP, the Open Compute community, by working alongside with many of our partners. We have co-lead a project of Open RMC, and then we are in the process of contributing the first, what we call the general purpose enterprise server, that was targeted in some of the smaller cloud service provider as well as enterprise customers for the 1U and 2U. And we also participate in some of the artificial intelligence OAM projects and co-lead some of the designs as well. I think we have invested so much, and we feel very grateful to have the opportunity to working with a lot of smart people in the community and working with them to make sure our design is feeding some of the real-time workloads. For the next 10 years, I do see OCP has some challenges that are ahead of it. However, I do see the community leadership, it's already working hand to hand with the entire community try to resolve this. Some of the example I can give you is most of the product we have showcased in Open Compute project has been a very optimized solution at the L11 rack level. However, that does create an entry barrier for some of the enterprise customer who didn't buy IT infrastructure by rack as a unit. So that will be something we have to figure out as a community. How do we pushing adoption, right, beyond just rack level? And of course, procurement practice and mission critical application, how does those gears get validated in some of the cloud environment? And those are the things we have to figure out as a community together for the next 10 years for pushing a greater adoption. But I think as a community, I feel very confident we will find that solution and then work toward to that more optimized and then wider adoption.
First, I would like to say that for me, the overall open computing initiative is very fascinating. It belongs to those initiatives that people that have a common vision are getting together and driving it and working on a joint solution. What makes it fascinating is the fact that those people are coming from different countries, different cultures, and actually in many cases different companies, and the companies are competing with each other. And to work together and to make a solution working, it's not an easy task, just to show that all of us can collaborate and work together on a solution. In many cases, those initiatives takes very long time. Many cases, of course, they fail. But I would say that I'm happy to see that the Open Computing Initiative relatively in a very short time started to gain some momentum in the industry. When we see fruits, 10 years ago is not a huge amount of time to drive such an initiative, and I believe that all of us are actually see the fruit because it actually eliminated the barrier to entry. If in the past only the big companies could work to develop an end-to-end solution, now small companies, including startups, don't need to start from scratch, are taking work that have been done by others and just work on their unique technology and IP. And of course, there are some drawbacks. One of them that I can think about was on the security aspect, because it's an open platform. There are maybe other people that can put viruses, and once you are using those work, you may be exposed to viruses and other threats. But as long as we are actually aware of it and working and solving it, I think that the overall initiative is very successful, and it's a very important that we'll continue to do it.
I think the future of computation is about to get really interesting in terms of helping. The world is becoming increasingly heterogeneous. It's more disaggregated, and the portion of the world's power that is being consumed by this industry, ICT, however we want to call the industry that is running clouds and operating telco services, these are growing to be more than 10% of the world's computational power consumption. So we have to address this increasingly complicated, increasingly disaggregated, increasingly large portion of the world's power consumption by partnering together. We have to partner together so that we can make the right investments, that we can solve end user problems, because not everyone will operate in every country and meet every country's regulations. So we have to make it easier to be able to address those concerns. The way that OCP is sort of thinking about this is we're rolling out a 2.0 framework. So we're really trying to focus on the set of initiatives that will meet the market needs of today. And those are ones that you know well. They're the ones that we've focused on for the last 10 years. Modularity, at-scale operations, which includes management and security, sustainability, which all of our circular economy operations, but also really understanding and setting a framework for how scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions should be reported out and operated around. And then integrated solutions, again, that I referred to a little bit earlier, but the work that we're doing in that domain space to help make it easier to deploy systems on all sorts of software platforms and for end user scenarios. The interesting thing that's different about OCP 2.0 is that we also want to seed future innovation. We really want to be the place where partners come together to help drive the future of computation. So the key initiatives that we're looking at in that domain space are optics, open silicon in general, which focuses on everything from chiplets to AI and ML, and cooling scenarios, because we have to come up with better and more sustainable ways to address the heat that is happening in data centers.
There are a lot of opportunities in the next decade for open compute. The first is watching how the different markets react to open hardware. It's happening now in telco. To watch how fast telcos around the world have embraced open hardware and open software and the disaggregation, I can see that in the next decade transferring to other industries. So financial services, public sector, really traditional healthcare organizations. So all of these legacy-oriented mindsets and how fast they can move toward open hardware, I think will be a big change in the next decade. Another big change will be advanced cooling. As I'd mentioned, we are seeing a big growth in the types of cooling technologies that are happening around the world. Most of those, if not all, are very proprietary. So I think in the next decade, as these cooling and advanced cooling and immersion companies start to work within open compute, you'll start to see their designs open up and be even more collaborative than they are right now. So I can anticipate a big wave of immersion type of solutions being open sourced in the future. Another area that I can see is around, of course, accelerators and interesting use cases for open compute. We're seeing that a little bit now, but with the open designs, you can put open compute hardware in a variety of use cases that are really unique that you cannot do with traditional hardware. So in the next decade, I anticipate a lot of more ruggedized or harsh environments where you could put an OCP device that you could not put a traditional piece of hardware. So these more interesting use cases, I think, will become even more interesting and more prevalent in the next decade. And my big bet for the next decade is sustainability and circular economy. It is certainly a topic that everyone is embracing now around sustainability and how do we make things carbon neutral and net zero. But in the future, the idea of buying circular economy hardware or second use, designing things with the end in mind, and reusing hardware to 2 and 3 and 4 times its life cycle, I think is going to be standard in the future. Customers will demand it, and as soon as the customers demand it, the market will react. So sustainability at the facility level and at the hardware level around scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, to me, is the big bet for the next decade.
We would expect in the next 10 years, artificial intelligence will be ubiquitous in our daily life. As such, data security and privacy may become the central theme of open computing. We believe OCP definitely can play an essential role in privacy-preserving computing. Another focus area could be power consumption in data centers. Low power, yet high-efficient computing may become one of the dominant factors like never before. This is because power saving ultimately helps reduce carbon dioxide emission. This is indeed consistent with the overwhelming consensus from many countries in the world to reach carbon neutrality in the next 2 or 3 decades.
So what might be important for the next 10 decades? When we think about it, OCP has been looking a lot to hyperscalers, so the top-end users which are adopting technology at a very wide scale. But the market is not only made of this kind of end users. So we can think about corporate and enterprise customers or even SMBs, and they deserve the rights to have deeper innovations for their own purpose to help them growing up their business. And I believe this is an area where during the next decade the community could provide some very strong enhancement, and we should be focusing on these specific vertical markets. So the other important things when we look at IT is related to system security. Cyber security is becoming a critical subject within our industry, and we probably can deliver something extremely efficient by leveraging security through transparency. And we can see that through many different projects, including the Open System Firmware Work Group, or even adopting OpenBMC at scale, which are promoting open source software for low-level firmware, which were used to be black box and pretty hard to audit and not properly maintained by many suppliers. So these work groups are opening the door for higher security systems, and that is something which is becoming critical. Something important also for the community, I believe, within the next decade is related to the tools that we are using to engineer our systems. So up to now, we were using proprietary tools, and being able to use open source tools to design systems might be triggering a wider community, because this will allow end users or potential contributors to use their own systems to develop computers and develop open hardware solutions. Most of the people cannot afford super expensive licenses to design systems. So my current feeling is that the next decade is going to be as dynamic as the previous one, and we have now a community which is well established, stabilized, and promoting open hardware. This has been a great result from the past decades. So I wish a long life to the open compute communities, and let's discuss about it within the next 10 years. Have a great day.
What I think will be the focus area for the next 10 years for Open Compute Project will continue to innovate, as we always do, for the leading edge computing, storage, and networking, and so forth. We already have sub-projects focused on artificial intelligence, 5G, edge computing, and those are the next generation product that everyone want to see and everyone want to use. And Inspur has over 30 years working hardware, optimizing solution, working with customer hand to hand. I think this is where the community will eventually have to do, is not everyone has very unique product, but as a community, we should having all this different uniqueness and come together as a joint design, and which can adopt a wider adoption. So more people can buy the same product, but with the optimization for specific workload. And I think that's what the ultimate goal for Open Compute Project, because you don't want to create a unique product and you can only buy and consume by yourself. You want the entire community to be on it, and then that's why we initiate the general purpose enterprise project with several OEMs out there, and we want to standardize the spec and make sure there will be a wider adoption for this product, and everyone can have a reliable product down the road. And then of course you have different choices of vendor that you already in your supply chain, or you want to introduce a new supplier because they have a product. And I think that's one of the goals we have foresee the next focus point for Open Compute Project. A second focus point I think the Open Compute Project can do is bringing down the total cost of ownership. Obviously the CapEx side, if as a community collectively we have decided what we want to produce, and there's enough collectively accumulated value, we can definitely bring down the cost and modularize the design, and we don't reinvent the wheel for the hardware. And just what we call in Inspur, we call it common building blocks. If we can actually reuse the building blocks multiple times, and then that increase the reliability and of course lower the cost. And on the OPEX side of it, I think many subject groups in the community already is trying to innovate it on different power delivery and cooling solutions. And those are the OPEX part of the equation that the community is also focused on to make sure we have the most optimized solution and power delivery to power on our IT equipment. So those are the things I would say it's really important, and we have to stay focused as a community for the Open Compute project.
So what I would like to see is the expansion of Open Compute to other areas, not just to stay with the high-tech industry. The high-tech industry domain is very well known. It's very important that we'll continue to do what we've been doing. But what is really important also to expand it to other areas and to solve other issues that I would say the world is facing today, and to make it at the end of the day a better world. For example, let's take the current crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are still facing. Hopefully it's going to be over very soon. But if we could and can and will provide a solution that can detect the virus earlier and can analyze what is going on earlier, and definitely is going to save life. It's not easy because the high-tech industry will need to collaborate with other industry like the biology, chemistry, medicine. There are different disciplines of development, there are different methodologies, they are talking different language that the high-tech industry is using, but this is a gap that we need to work together and to solve. One of the easiest, I wouldn't say relatively easiest solutions that we can come with is some kind of a database, for example, that everybody is going to use, all the different countries that will be able to feed in the data. So, and the data can be analyzed over a supercomputer that equipped, for example, with GPU, like the Cambridge One supercomputer that launched just recently by NVIDIA, and can help scientists and healthcare experts to analyze and to do fast work and to analyze the situations, I would say. So this is, of course, just one example. The global warming is another one, but again, different disciplines. So I would like to challenge, I would say, the Open Compute community to think about out of the high-tech box and to address those issues as well, and to get other members to the same environment that we are in.
So when I think about open computing and Intel's direction, Pat Gelsinger, our CEO's latest announcement in March about IDM 2.0 as a strategy really sets the stage for why open computing is so critical for Intel. Intel is looking at a totally different approach. We want to offer our products in all sorts of interesting domain spaces, but we want to be a technology partner from the foundry to the product space, anywhere in between. And we are obviously, and always have been, very involved in software, joint routes to market activities in those domain spaces, and we are increasingly building in those domain spaces. So the vision of OCP to build foundational building blocks that can be leveraged from cloud to edge, that ensure modular design, that enable open software, these are exactly the foundations that are critical to Intel being able to support IDM 2.0 and an increasingly heterogeneous market. So I think we're deeply aligned, and I'm very excited to be able to serve in both capacities.
As the #1 cloud service provider in Asia, Alibaba Cloud strives for enable intelligent yet efficient operation in our data centers and promoting environmental friendly computing. We will continue our contribution to many existing open initiatives, such as quickly enable ODSA with our Xenium heterogeneous computing platform by leveraging Xenium's ultralight framework and efficient hardware-software co-optimizations, At the same time, we'd love to collaborate with the community on future open computing initiatives, such as privacy-preserving computing, to better serve our customer.
Specifically to Inspur, I think our focus point for the next decade on open compute will be higher adoption rate. Inspur had a lot of success, tremendous success in selling optimized rack solution to the hyperscaler data center. However, we do see a trend in telco, finance, medical, manufacturing, everywhere. Everyone is adopting some form of OCP. It could be as small as OCP NIC card 3.0, or it could be an entire rack solution integrated for them. And some of the company was able to enjoy about 30% of the TCO saving based on CapEx and OpEx. And Inspur will continue to drive that innovation and then pushing the adoption to enterprise. And what we believe is if we have found a solution invested in our engineering resources from the community, and then we have achieved some sort of optimization, we should push it to a wider standardization. Basically put it into a standard product that can purchase as a 1U or 2U or 2U for now. Why reinvent the wheel if we have achieved some sort of optimization by working with some customer or by working with the OCP community? Those are the things we want to achieve and continue to focus ourselves into. Of course, another thing is a supply chain. We continue to work with joint design with the manufacturing such as silicons, commodities, rack suppliers, operating system, and ISV solutions. And we want to integrate all this into design that could be really adaptable and purchased, consumed by some of the enterprise customers that we have. They don't have to run through talking to all these different partners, right? In their supply chain, they can only talk to Inspur, and then we will provide an optimized solution for them to consume. They only have to deal with Inspur in order to achieve their infrastructure needs. And I think that's going to be the focus point for Inspur in the next decade to promoting OCP. Thank you.
NVIDIA believes that open computing eliminates the technology barriers and enable collaboration between the different companies. This is important not just for the industry itself, it's important to NVIDIA, which drive innovation and it makes the world actually better in this particular case from the technology solutions point of view. And NVIDIA has been supporting it for a very long time and will continue to support it in all aspects. For example, the NVIDIA networking business unit today used to be Mellanox at the time, was among the first companies that became a supporting member of the opencompute.project.org. We are not just supporting it, actually our engineers are actively involved in the development of the different standards like the OCP 1.0, 2.0, and recently the 3.0. And we've been leading a couple of incubation committees because they are important to the future of the operation itself. Even before that, as a startup company, before we joined the OCP.org, we drove the InfiniBand and the Rocky standard as open standard. And later on, we became actually the first company to come with an open switch. And we have been supporting openly to all kinds of networking operating system, including the recent one, Sonic. Also, NVIDIA is the home for open source project and research across all kind of domain, including AI, robotics, and more. It includes deep learning solutions like the Rapids that include GPU-based data for scientists, Tensor RTs, that it's hyper performance for deep learning, and there are so much more that probably I don't have enough time to describe everything, so you can find it on our website under the development section. So thank you again. This is probably the last question, so thank you again for attending. Looking forward to collaborate with you on the current and the future solutions as well. Thank you guys.